So I'm so excited to get my buddy Scott Mordell in front of my listeners. Scott's an amazing guy. He's a leader of leaders. Starting out in the accounting world, going to school for accounting in Michigan, becoming an accountant in a big firm, and then having the opportunity to go to work for an entrepreneurial organization like the Dick-Duchess Group, being mentored by just two great guys, a father-son team, Dick-Duchess and his son Craig, as well as so many. He's become such an amazing leader in the world today. So not just a CEO of a normal company, but a CEO of 28,000 CEOs across the globe. How crazy is that? And this guy does an awesome job of guiding this great organization, YPO, globally. An organization that's grown from, I think, 18,000 members, he'll talk about, to 28,000 members. And boy, and when I joined before Scott was a CEO, there was a lot of work to do for the members of YPO to get other YPOs in. And there's just not a lot of work anymore. People are pounding on the door to get into YPO chapters all over the world. So it's really, really something else. It's the tips for success that he's going to talk about. The 5 tips that he sees for success are different than many I've heard. But boy, they sure do resonate well. So excited. Get your listening ears on and listen to this person that not many people get the opportunity to spend the time with. Scott Mordell, a great friend of mine, a guy I really love, and an amazing leader in our world today. So get ready and listen to Scott on Ditch Digger CEO. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to Ditch Digger CEO today. And boy, we're going to have a blast today. We've got a buddy of mine that I really respect a lot, and I love this guy. He exudes what leadership is about. In our show, guys, where we usually we have some entrepreneurs, right? Startup entrepreneurs. We have CEOs that take over family businesses that think like entrepreneurs, or CEOs that are operators, right? We've got a mix of amazing minds, and it's a blast to interview. Scott's a little different than all these, and Scott has led a group of companies back from what, 30 years ago, I'm guessing, till maybe 15 years ago. And then Scott today is the leader of leaders in the world of YPO. So we think about this, we have 26 or 7,000, and Scott could probably correct me on this, but 26 or 7,000 members of YPO globally, CEOs of companies across the globe, and Scott is the leader of leaders. So that's quite a responsibility.
So that means he's the CEO of CEOs.
Exactly. Thousands of CEOs, right? And it's like herding cats. So think about that. I mean, these people are like me, many of them like me, a little crazy, right? ADD, or they're some are highly educated, some aren't educated. Just all different personalities. Some are demanding as heck, right? They want the best of the best, and they demand the best of the best. Well, Scott leads the group of these CEOs like nobody I've ever seen. And we're gonna have a blast today with Scott. So Scott, thanks for being here, brother, and welcome.
Thank you. You may have oversold me just a little bit, Gary. I feel like I'm working for 28,000 people, and so I don't feel like I'm leading them necessarily. And but it's great fun, and it's a great organization, and I'm proud to be with it.
That's what leaders do, right? They just they work for whoever's they serve whoever they're there to serve, right? And I was at a I think they called it the Latin America Real Estate Roundtable the last couple days in Miami, and talking to a gal that leads a lot of these events, Kelly, and then some of the leaders of this committee for this group. And every time a couple times I mentioned Scott's name. Heck yeah, I know Scott. Oh, Scott's amazing. And Kelly, I know she works directly with you a lot, and she loves you. I mean, anybody that I know in YPO anywhere that knows Scott just thinks the world of him. And I learned why as I became a forum mate of Scott's about 3 years ago, right, Scott? 3.5 years ago.
Yep.
And I was blessed enough to get him in my forum in this YPO Heartland chapter we're in. And man, it's been a blast getting to know him. But Scott, this is just about your story, buddy. So we want you to just kind of tell your story. It's a conversation, and we love to always start out with your childhood, right? How you were brought up, how you became the person you are today, the family that drove you to who you are, and all that. So if you can start from that, we'd love to hear it.
Well, thank you very much, and this is a great opportunity to talk about all of this and leadership and everything else that it goes with. For me, my story is not too remarkable, I don't think, at least compared to many of the people I've met. I grew up middle class in Detroit, and I was the middle child of 5 boys in our family, and we grew up in a very basic, classic American suburb back in the 70s and 80s. So with that, heavy into sports. Did all the stuff people did back then, which was, we'd leave the house in the morning, we'd never come back until after dark, and kind of fill the gaps with a lot of fun in between and occasional mischief. And so, with that, went through school, did okay, was always a decent student, but always did just enough to get by. Okay, my goal was not to gain the scrutiny of my parents when it came to grades. Okay, so I had 4 other brothers who were racing for scrutiny, so I just kind of found a way to stay out of the way in that way. And from there, ended up in an all-boys Catholic high school. My dad found that putting boys in Catholic high school was really a good idea for a little bit more discipline than maybe we were showing earlier. And I would agree with that. The high school was in the city of Detroit, and it had a very mixed population in terms of people who were from a nearby suburb, as well as people from the city and people who couldn't afford to attend. And it was a nice mix in the Lasallian mission. And that really helped frame me quite a bit, because the Christian brothers that were there really kind of kicked me in the pants every chance they had to get me to do more. Then from there, the coaching was go to college. You have to go to college. You have to pay your own bills. There was no question about any of that in my mind. And I thought I wanted to be an engineer.
Let me go back to sports. Yeah. Tell me the sports that you were involved in, and your brothers and yourself were involved in, and tell me how that looked.
Thank you. Loved all sports. I played, I would play everything, basketball, baseball, hockey, football. Those were my main ones. I dropped out of basketball really quickly when it was clear that when I jumped, you couldn't get paper underneath my heel. And 2, if the ball was rolling, I had no desire to dive for it. Okay, so that was not my path. My passionate sports, I loved baseball, but it was too boring once I got a little bit older, and so it was all about football and hockey. I was a goalie in hockey. It was the greatest position in any sport. Yeah. You never come out of the game. You see the whole game in front of you. And I just loved it. And I regret that I had to stop playing hockey, because I had to choose between having friends at an inner city Detroit high school, which had no hockey team, or playing hockey. And I chose my friends in high school.
That's cool.
So that ended up taking me to college. I played Division III football. Was the smallest offensive lineman. I think I played at 230, which would barely make me a flanker back these days. But I was studying for accounting.
What school is that? What school is that, Scott? Again?
I went to Albion College for 2 years.
Okay,
a small school, had 1,800 people, I believe, and
wow.
Then it was just way too small. Even when school was in session, I think the town had 10,000 people in it. Okay, so that was just a sign for a bunch of bored college kids is not really a good recipe for success, So I ended up transferring up to Michigan State, which was a giant school that had 40,000 people on campus, and for my last.
So that 220, 30-pound lineman probably wasn't working out there, though, was it?
No, I was thinking about playing football, but I figured at Michigan State, the only thing I could have done was get on a special team, and hear my name on the PA, during one game would be my ultimate achievement. And the price for that to happen, to play on the scout team against all those really big guys, was not really that great. So so I bailed from that, and had a really great college experience, because I had the small liberal arts school, and then I had the big university, and got to see the world through both lenses, and turned out real well. And graduated in accounting, and did what accountants do, is when you don't know what you want to be, you go into public accounting.
All right.
So I went into public accounting, and the idea was you get into a lot of different businesses, get exposed to what different businesses are, and hopefully get hired by one of those businesses or figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
And all I figured out was in the first year, I absolutely hated financial statement auditing. Okay. It was like, it was just crazy. I mean, you go in, it was all after the fact, and I'm sure it's different now. But for me and my personality, it was just really hard. I had a problem though, because in Michigan, you had to work for 2 years in public accounting before you could become a CPA.
All
so
right.
I had, in a year, when you're 22 years old, is an eternity, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to switch firms and get into the tax department of another firm, which I found really fun because I was doing things prospectively. I was working on big transactions. My mistakes or my good insights ended up having direct monetary value to my clients, and so
Sure.
That was really fun. And I got to work for some really fascinating families in Detroit. The Illich family, the Polk family, the Cranes family from Cranes Communications, and just really had some wonderful exposure to ongoing family businesses and infrastructures, as well as just from the financial side.
How many businesses within a year, Scott, would you be touching, like at that point in your life?
Oh, I would have had 25 clients. Okay. In different degrees in terms of what my involvement would be with them.
Okay.
And a lot of that would depend if there was a transaction or whichever else was going on.
So what a cool experience it was, huh, to be able to just to peek in these businesses and just understand a little bit about all of them, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. I know we always talk about mentorship, about who we learn from and what all that is, but really one of my first business mentors was the youngest partner in what was then Touche Ross History, which is now part of Deloitte. And Ray Lombardi, he took me under his arm and really kind of coached me through the whole program. And I got put on a lot of great accounts because he was kind of watching for me. And so it's big lesson. It started out early that this is very much about people, and there's always somebody there who can either help you or kind of get in your way, or if you don't know what's going on, can really help you figure it out. And he was one of those people. And so he was great.
So he was a guy that had passion for the industry. You could see it probably in him and transferred some of that to you at the time, huh?
Yeah. He was running the Detroit office, which at the time was the biggest office in the firm, and he stayed with Deloitte after they merged, because it used to be Deloitte and Touche back in the day. Now it's just Deloitte. Done so many mergers, and so he stayed through that for the entire time, and kept himself interested because he wasn't doing just client service the entire time. He was starting to lead different business units in the firm. So really fun, restless spirit in a good way.
Yeah.
So.
Is he still alive today?
He is, and just a great guy. We've fallen a bit out of contact, over time, but he, from a business standpoint, he coached me, and there's a really great moment. I was cutting corners, as you would say. I was finishing up a bunch of returns, and it was tax deadline day, right, and everything else. And we had some software that did the work, not as well as it happens now. And I had just kind of not really gone through everything with enough detail. And here's a partner on this account going through all of these different returns, and he's got to sign them because it's his name that signs on behalf of the firm.
Sure.
And he comes into my office. I'll never forget it. He says, "Scott, look at this." And it's like on the front page of one of the returns, the numbers didn't add up. He says, even if you're wrong, okay, the numbers have to add up. And it was really great because he just said, "Look, you're better than this. We in our business, the details matter, okay,
Sure.
and you have to be on it." And that raised my game so much, literally from that moment forward. Because I felt like I really disappointed him, and I always thought I was going to be pretty good, but that was not pretty good. And having pointed out in a pretty powerful way in a consulting firm was really great for me. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was good. But I did public accounting for what ended up being about 4 years, and concluded that that was not going to be a life for me. And when people don't know what they want to do next and they don't have a business idea or whatever else, they go to grad school. So it's exactly what I did.
How old were you at that point? 5?
I was 26.
26.
And so from there, I ended up at Kellogg. I got in on the waiting list literally 2 days before, or actually about 4 days before class started. And so my wife and I found an apartment and moved in the course of literally 72 hours. And we got
so Kellogg, not a bad place, I've heard. Is that the cereal joint that has a school tied to it, or what's with that?
Yes,
I've heard it's a good place.
It's the study of flakes. The flake is unique, and so you could just go on for years. But I was in a 1-year program for that, so I'm only a novice at flakes. But Kellogg was phenomenal because
I've heard that.
For me, coming from Detroit, where it was really very much about manufacturing, and in my family, it was very much about, pay your own bills, be self-sustaining. I never really thought about the breadth of opportunity. It was always like moving to what's next to hopefully climb a little bit of a ladder, but also stay employed and ultimately had a little bit more risk averse because in Detroit, I had a lot of experience with a lot of people not working. And the culture of what I experienced in Detroit was very much about, it's good to have a job, much better than not having a job.
Right.
Okay. And so therefore, I treasured working maybe implicitly or subconsciously a little bit more than others. And I think that for me, my path was always going to go for a little bit more stability. And I think I've played that through in a lot of ways in my career. Although I've played disruption in a different way, I think.
Sure.
And but Kellogg, after being at Kellogg for a little while, because Touche Ross had funded my Kellogg, and I was supposed to go back and be a consultant, they didn't do that. They do it frequently now, but that was unheard of in those days. And I just decided I wasn't going to do that. So I paid them back and took out some loans and ended up got some good advice at Kellogg from Martin Koldyke, who was one of the venture capitalists from Frontenac. And he came in and spoke to our firm and says, look, I don't know why all you really supposedly smart kids, okay, go into consulting and do all this other kinds of stuff because one day you're going to work in a business. He says, it makes no sense. And he says, if you want to start in a business, go to the business and start working in the business. That's the only way you're going to grow and build and understand the business and get better and build your own equity in the business. And it's just go get started. He says, I just don't understand. I think all you guys chase all this investment banking and consulting stuff when you say you want to be in a business, then darn it, go get in a business, make America better. And
wow, that's cool.
That really struck with me too. And so I took that and had already done consulting in my view from my public accounting days, and then ended up working with answered a newspaper ad of all things. They didn't come on campus for a financial analyst with Dick-Duchess Industries. Okay, and Dick-Duchess is a big family here in town. They've been here literally since forever, but at that time, they had 28 different businesses, and ranging from defense contracting to home improvement type products to rail cars to depleted uranium to some research groups to TV and radio stations. It was classic entrepreneur aggregation of businesses, and it was really stimulating. And at the time, he was rebuilding Arlington Racecourse, right. And so he was in the news quite a bit. And so I joined him. I wanted to get into manufacturing. And I'll never forget because the position was for a financial analyst. And I said, look, I'm an MBA. And they're like, so we don't hire MBAs usually, And I was like, well, I don't want to be a financial analyst. I want to do more business stuff and everything else. And so they said, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll call you a senior business analyst. I said, oh, good. Yeah, let's go with that. Okay. And so I did. And the economy began to turn right after I joined, and all these different businesses began to struggle a little bit. And they took me as a business analyst to work with one of their consultants to really go around from business to business and say, hey, I'm from corporate. We're going to restructure your business so that we can make money again.
They always love to see that, don't they? Let me see you walking in the door. Hey, I'm from corporate. You're to restructure.
Just keep smiling, right? So I got so many exposure to different businesses and got to work with some really, really bright people, and also started to find myself in the room with Mr. Dick-Duchess, his son, and the senior leadership groups, and really got to start to have that kind of interaction with people. Right. And so
this would be like the late 80s, Scott?
No, this is 89, 90.
Yeah,
and And so I think I went to 13 or 14 businesses really in that tour. One of those took me to Arlington Park, which had just reopened in '89, and it was losing money. And they said, look, we got to cut some of this operating cost out. And so I did a project there, and we cut out, I think, 25 or 30% of the overhead. And
wow.
I planned it, and of course we didn't want to detract from the customer experience, and so there was a lot of negotiation and work relative to the team that was there. And then Dick said, "Hey, Dick-Duchess said, hey, I'd really like you to stay here and help us implement this and kind of go forward." And I said to Dick, I said, "Look, I joined you to do manufacturing. I'm from Detroit. I want to do manufacturing, and to me, that's really, really what I'm here for." And Dick-Duchess, here's this guy who's just like this mega business icon in Chicago, entrepreneur and everything else. And he leans in and he looks at me and said, "Look, I thought I was going to be an attorney." Look, okay, so why don't you start here on Monday, okay? And so it was really, really great because I got to office right next to him, right down the hall a couple doors. I saw him every single day, and he turned out to be just an incredible mentor for me. So
Scott, I got a couple questions when it comes to Dick. Well, and obviously with him having so many businesses and having this visionary mindset, as you saw, and you obviously, like you said, it was a mentor. What were some characteristics, or what were some traits that you saw in him being the visionary entrepreneur that he is, that either you emulate or you even duplicate right now, that you've seen back in the 90s?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for that. And he'd been in World War II. He fought the Panzer divisions in World War II. He was in Battle of the Bulge. Wow. Okay, and he had a couple Purple Hearts. He was toe tagged, I believe, even. Okay, and
wait, toe tag. Tell him what that means.
Oh, he was toe tagged. He was left for dead for a period of time, and as it turns out, he wasn't dead, and somebody noticed him, and he lived through an injury in battle. Okay, and
wow,
and he ended up joining. He went to Culver Military Academy in northwestern Indiana, and he ended up joining the military maybe a little bit young. Okay, and so he had some really formative leadership lessons that were experienced. That when he made mistakes, people died. Okay, or even when he did things right, people died. Okay, the only helmets I've worn are a football helmet and a hockey helmet. Okay, and a bad day is my shoulder hurts. Right, and he had what really just struck me for the profile that I'm framing up here for you for myself is he had no fear. Okay, it's like okay, this may work, this may not work, but we're going to do it anyway. And he was always willing to do what he thought was right as opposed to what was the easiest path. And a really great example is at Arlington Racecourse, we'd have 500,000 people come to the racetrack, or 1 million over the course of a season. And, somebody loses on their bets and they come back with these crazy claims like, "I slipped on a pickle and you owe me $24.90. Like, how much did you lose on that last race? Well, $24.90. So it was really kind of crazy. And so, and you get these claims and stuff, and a lot of firms say, look, that's the cost of doing business. It's noise. We're just not gonna fight all those, and so some of them escalate in cost and impact. And he was like, "Look, if it's ours and we owe it, let's pay it. And if we don't owe it and someone's scamming us, we're not going there. Okay, I'd rather stay with what's right." So to be a CFO and ultimately the CEO of Arlington Park, and to be liberated by somebody saying, "No, I want to do the right thing." Okay, and it was extraordinary because so many people will take the financial short to it. In time, when you get a pattern of that behavior, your claims do go down, okay, and stuff, but it takes a little pain in the near term in order to do that. He was willing to do it, and he was just willing to be right, okay, and he was also very willing to be wrong, and so I took a lot of models from that, and I think I carried from there very much. It's like let's do what we know is right in the long run, and stay true to that. And I'm willing to take short-term pain for it. And so that's been my play.
That's amazing. And you exude these things, Scott. The cool thing is knowing Scott, he exudes these things. I mean, most people don't last in this role Scott's in because he's got so many people watching, right? So many leaders watching that are multimillionaires and billionaires watching what he does. and leading these different different groups, whether it be a construction network that I'm in, or real estate network I'm in, and others network. There's so many networks, and they're all leaders of leaders that are leading them, right? And they're looking at Scott on a constant basis, questioning what he's doing. So the cool thing about Scott is he's been here for longer than anybody I've known in this position. 7 years now, Scott, is it 8 years? What is it?
It's 8 years. I'm the longest tenured person in my role, so I don't know if that's good or bad.
So 8 years. He's never going to tell you, brag about it like that, right? But he nothing bothers him. He takes it all with a grain of salt and makes the best decision he believes at the time and keeps rolling. And I think any leader can learn from that, right? I mean, you got to make the best decision you believe you can make, and you got to lead with courage, and treat people like you want to be treated, right? So no better leader than Scott when it comes to exuding these qualities. And Dick, I've met a handful of times, and boy, what a character he is. I mean, I met him four or five years ago, where I sat with him for some time at an event for a couple hours, and my wife and I just got to know him so well just by questioning him, and he was as interested in us as we were in him. But what an amazing guy to learn from and to be mentored by, right, Scott?
Yeah,
what a blessing. What a blessing.
Absolutely. He's our oldest YPO member now. He's 97 years old.
Wow.
And you would not know it. He looks so good. He's in such good shape to be through all he's been through, right? And this guy's amazing. He's
just extraordinary. And my time at Arlington was fantastic because I started out as CFO and I ended up as CEO. And when I joined YPO, it was because Dick and his son Craig told me to join YPO. Okay, so I was a resource for YPO because I was a gambling expert at the time, and so when YPO events would happen in town, I would be a guest speaker relative to what's happening in gambling, and we would host events and stuff like that. But I never thought YPO was for me, and because it was kind of like the rich guy's game, and people who have planes and big family businesses, and boy, I was just outclassed. I'm just a kid from Detroit, And Dick's son, Craig, called me up one day and said, Scotty, you got to join YPO. I want you to join YPO. And then Dick and Craig are kind of just telling me that they really wanted me to join YPO, which is the greatest compliment I could ever have because I know how big YPO was for them in their growth. And I didn't want to do it. I just didn't feel I belonged. So I thought some passive resistance would kind of get me through and just kind of ignore the request, And I don't know, some months later, it's like, join YPO or you're fired. So I didn't think they were going to fire me, of course, but they were just making the point. And so I joined, and it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've moved into other businesses and had a 19-year career with the Dick-Duchess SWAT organization through I think 7 or 8 businesses for them. And the Arlington experience itself was my formative time because I was there for 11 years, but it was 33 years of career experience, okay? Because I was working all the time, and it was business, it was politics, it was media, okay? And it was just general leadership and learning about myself. And because the work schedule was almost always, except for the Christmas holidays, there was almost always a reason to be working 6 or 7 days, and the game was on the entire time. And so I got a lot of career experience and lost a little balance with my family, because our son was born in 1991, and then we had another one in 93, and then our daughter was born in 97. And I was one of those guys, I was always working. And it cost me some relationships with my family and everything else. So there's always a trade-off. And for me, I had 33 years of career experience, but before I was 45. But at the same time, there's always a bit of a price. So we've calibrated to that since then. And I took a little sabbatical, and it took some time to recalibrate my life when our kids were in high school, and we're all in a good place now. But it's been a good ride and a lot of learnings about what a cumulative life is as it goes.
Yeah, no doubt. And there was a time there, Scott, where you were responsible to get some politics in front of you, and some tax issues and some incentives. There's casinos coming in play in the Chicagoland area, and you had to be in the middle of all that. Can you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, it was a contradiction, right? To be running a consumer business and sell people on hope and a great experience and all the other stuff, but then be in the front page of the paper saying how your business was going out of business because it was outregulated and by some callous and greedy politicians. And so we had to play that dichotomy. And so So we had spent an incredible amount of time doing politics. We had 14 union locals, I believe, at the racetrack,
wow.
and all of them have political connections and in a regulated business like ours is.
Yeah.
For a period of time, we couldn't even change the price of a muffin without getting the state to change the to approve it. Okay.
Wow.
So the degree of regulation was quite extraordinary in the early 90s, and arguably, if you go back to the history of racing, there's and gambling just generally throughout the states. There's been corruption. There's been all kinds of ways that people have profited because it was always a monopoly business that where demand always outstripped supply.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of money to carve up. When I joined the organization and when Dick was rebuilding the racetrack in the late 80s, they changed, they authorized casino-style gambling and riverboats. The lottery was continuing to grow, and yet the regulation and taxation structure of horse racing was exactly the same as if it was 1975 or actually 1965. And as a result, for a high fixed cost business like horse racing, it didn't make sense. And I say high fixed cost is more than 300 acres of infrastructure, more than 2,000 stables that we offer to the horses that we provide for free. Okay,
wow.
So we had well over 2,000 people working at the track seasonally and otherwise, every single day of our live race meet, but that was all carry cost. Okay, relative to hoping people bet more than $2 on a race, and so the betting wasn't even against us. Off of the $2 bet, the average take was about 30 cents. So it's that has to add up quite a bit in order to pay for all those people. And it worked in a monopoly way, but not so much in a non-monopoly way. And so that was my battle all the way through. And so changing governors, we had to close the racetrack. Could you imagine closing a 70-year-old institution?
I remember this.
The amount of heat that came back to Dick, and it came back to Dick. He was the owner, even though I was the one kind of working through the operational flow. But he took the most of the heat, and talk about a guy with fortitude to do what he thinks he needs to do was just extraordinary. And we closed it, and I had the challenge of we wanted to keep a core group of people because we were hopeful that we would get some legislation at some point, but we didn't want to just fire everybody. So we tried to go into some broader entertainment businesses and other things to keep the facility warm, if you will. And we kept it warm, but it didn't really work very well. And ultimately, we were fortunate, and I think it was 99, we were able to, after 7 years of political jockeying and finagling and working with coalitions and all the rest, they passed some horse racing legislation that allowed us to reopen. And so with that, we were able to better position Arlington in the national scene. And we also started to engage Churchill Downs. We ended up merging Arlington into Churchill Downs, really with pro forma earnings. As it went out, and that's been a great.
So think about the strength you have to have, right, and backbone to shut down an operation like that for 7 years, because you just know you can't make money the way it sits. You get this beautiful venue that's not that old at that point. Golly, it's only whatever it was, 6, 7, 8 years old at the time.
Yeah,
Scott?
we were closed for 2 seasons. I just want to.
2 seasons. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
We were closed for 2 seasons.
There you go. So two seasons, like 2 years to shut down an operation like that is unbelievable. I mean, you're with no guarantee that it's going to reopen, no guarantee that you're going to get the legislation that you need to be successful, right? And so that through that time, Scott, you're focused on really the regulation of the time and how are you going to get it changed and all that, dealing with the governor in place, the new governor coming in. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, very active in politics. So a lot of the things you hear about Illinois politics are probably true, and as well as there's a lot of really good people working in government too, and I think they don't get the attention and appreciation that they deserve. There's some really quality people who are working for service to the state as opposed to, just political jockeying and positioning. And so I got to see both sides. It was really just a fascinating and extraordinarily frustrating experience. But I got to lobby Barack Obama when he was a state senator, and some of these other folks that we were interacting with from a political standpoint, some icons throughout Illinois and beyond, and really helped me understand that it's all about people, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so everything's all about people. Your organization is about people. Because I'm going to do a little rabbit hole here. Is what's an organization? It's purpose, okay? It's people, it's processes that help the people work together, and then it's some capital because you need some assets in order to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all an organization is, okay? And so and the people are the thread for all of that. So how you structure, how you engage, who you engage with, do you have the right people? Are you working with the right people? Is ultimately about how just about anything worthwhile gets done. Okay, mm-hmm. And I'll leave the independent researcher and songwriter off to the side. I'm talking about organizations. Okay, and so nothing proved that to me more than being in horse racing and getting to meet all kinds of industrialists and other folks around the world because of what we were doing, but then also in Illinois, seeing a lot of really good people still falling short and yet continuing to be persistent, resilient, and ultimately you have to have a coalition within your organization to do things, or within the greater political scene in order to do things. So the goal is to get to the tipping point to where something can happen, and not to be right and be in the minority if you're really trying to get something done. Sure. And so I learned a lot about all of that, and it was a lot of constant analysis because the amount of failure was we failed every single legislative cycle for 7 years. Okay, so that's the spring and the fall session that we have here in Illinois, and every time you're mopping up and you got your lobbyists telling you, "Oh, you're really close. Come back next year. We'll get you in." So they kind of keep you going. But at the same time, it's like, I'm right. I know we're right. I don't know why people won't just do the right thing. And then you have to go back and be humble and say, okay, I got to reload. And so there's a lot of failure that created a lot of resilience and understanding. So it's been some great lessons, which I continue to carry.
There had to be a group of people you had a lot of trust in, that trusted you, that you could see were just ethical, honest, hardworking people in politics and government, like you said. And then you had to have some that you just had the feeling that you couldn't trust them. And did you work around those people? How did you do that? How did you bounce from those that you knew were there for a good reason, that were listening, and then those that weren't there for any reason except selfish reasons?
Yeah. Well, we decided, and I decided that I was going to be ethical and straight up no matter what. Okay, that I didn't want any record of my engagement to be doing wrong things. So you can't always work around those people because sometimes they're in the power infrastructure and everything else, but you can work with them. Okay, so over those series of interactions, I gained a reputation for being, I think, smart, but he was always well thought out, and he wasn't going to say one thing over here and say one thing over there. I was very steady about my message and who I was and what I was willing to do and not do. And in politics and even most other things, it's more important to be consistent, okay? And so that people can understand how they build their agendas off of you as much as it is for you to figure out how to build your agenda off of them. So I became a very consistent player in the things that we were doing, and Dick helped coach me to do that. And that I never felt that I compromised myself to do anything relative to the process. And some things, I was in some processes that didn't smell real good, probably in hindsight, and the other things, but I wasn't doing those kinds of things, and I always made sure that I could go to sleep at night because none of it's worth it. So awesome. I think we spend too much time worrying about the other people in terms of who are maybe someone will say shady, or they're not like me, they don't share my values, whatever silly words you want to use. But the fact is, it's really about you and your values that's going to dictate how you participate within that. And so so I never work around them, always work straight to them.
I like it. So tell me, you got through all that stuff, and how long were you the leader at the racetrack, and what was something that you guys delivered that you felt your team brought to play, that you delivered day in and day out, that made you then successful at the racetrack?
There was success on different levels. The racing business has been tough, especially from an on-track dynamic, and just because of the competition, of the change in society. Not as many people go to the races every single day as used to go back when the track was envisioned and everything else. So successes are varying levels. Political success was having the fortitude to continue through and achieve the legislation that allowed us to reopen, allowed Arlington still open today, allowed us to continue to employ people, and allowed us to continue the mission, which was to bring people to racing in a different way, because racing had a certain reputation. So our mission was nothing short of remaking the vision of racing. Okay, and so I feel we did that by bringing it back. And if you went there today, okay, and you walk in, you will never realize that building is 30 years old. The commitment to quality, the commitment to experience is really something I'm proud of, and I was a steward of that energy for a period of time, and I think I amplified it a bit, and they've continued to try to work that through. So there were some real wins on the people side and the development. And in the sense that it became a business as opposed to a bunch of people just doing what they do, and I was involved, leading a lot of that through, and I take a lot of pride in that from the Arlington standpoint.
It's impeccable. When you go in that place now. Have you ever been there, Q?
I have not.
Okay, we got to schedule a True Mentors event there.
I'm all down for that.
You'll love it.
Okay.
I mean, I go usually a few times a year, usually family-wise, or Cheryl and I, and then usually one of the groups or foundations that we're part of, and YPO. There's always an event here or there at Arlington. It's just a beautiful venue. It's always impeccable, like it was built, like you said, like it was built yesterday or something, right?
Yeah.
So it's a cool place.
Yeah.
So when was it that you transitioned out of the Duchess Walk companies, and tell us about that?
Yeah, so after Arlington, I went, was kind of had enough horse racing. I'd been in horse racing for over 10 years. And then, as I mentioned before, they had a number of other businesses. So I went back to corporate office and led some of their smaller businesses, as well as got involved in the garage door opener business and home access business called Chamberlain, the Chamberlain Group. Their biggest brands are LiftMaster and Chamberlain. You may be familiar with them. Yeah. And so they sell through both retail and dealer networks, and just really, really good company with good market share, good values, and I oversaw the international business and also served as its CFO. So had some great exposure and experiences. But come to around 2009, I'd been with the Duchess Waz for about 19 years, and as I mentioned, I just needed to recalibrate. I'd been working too much, quite frankly, and so I took a year and a half off. My two oldest boys were in high school, junior and senior. And then our daughter was in grade school, and just took some time off to kind of do whatever I wanted to do. And it was a blast. I recalibrated my life, recalibrated my leadership style, crafted my personal business principles, crafted my living model, read all the stuff I said I was never going to read or I wanted to read but never got to, and just really kind of recalibrated myself. And so that was the break that ended up bringing me to YPO, because I never would have done YPO without that break, and never would have gone for a not-for-profit without that break, and quite frankly, never would have had the confidence to do it without the support of my forum, as well as my own sense of mission, as opposed to some other trade-offs of what kind of roles you take. So that was a very critical time for me to just figure out what's important to me, and how can I make what's important to me more effective in what I do.
So your high school and grade school daughter and your high school boys got to know Dad a little better that time, huh?
Yeah.
How cool
they were playing sports, and we were at all the games and did all the stuff, and just really happy to do it. So. And
what sports were they involved in that you got involved in, or you watched?
Primarily volleyball.
All right.
Yeah, so they were on a very competitive volleyball team, and they played involved. And as a parent, by the way, being a volleyball parent is the best thing possible. Okay, there's no rainouts. Every game it's 72 degrees in there. There's food, easy. None of the matches really last more than an hour. It's like the perfect.
That's
perfect
true.
Parental game. And then our daughter played volleyball as well, and she played competitively and won, I think, 3 state titles in high school.
Cool.
She just finished her college career. She played down at Tulane, and so she was captain of the Tulane team for 2 years. So we've had we've been watching volleyball matches for a long time. So so we're just now shifting out of that, actually. But it was fun to participate as just a regular parent and not as CEO or anything else. And actually being unemployed was liberating. I got to do more politics locally and got involved in different networks, and really learned what networking is and what it's not, and really enjoyed the hell out of it. So
neat.
It was a great year and a half, and I'd have kept doing it if I didn't need to actually work. So so it was good.
So tell us how the YPO thing came about. How did there's an available opportunity there, and tell us about who kind of talked to you about that, or got you thinking about it, or seriously thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, I was working with some PE firms. I wanted to scale service. Arlington had taught me that scaling service is far more difficult than probably making things is. At least I'd come full circle from my Detroit days, and I think I'm fascinated about humans. How do humans work together? How do you scale or replicate really good service, high quality service and human contact in a way that's reliable for somebody experiencing it? And I've just been fascinated about that. So I was looking for a service organization that had a technology backbone in some way, shape, or form, and was working with some PE firms and looking at some opportunities, nothing too warm. And then the YPO opportunity, or YPO was looking for a CEO, wasn't an opportunity at that stage. And a couple of YPO friends of mine said, "You'd be perfect for this." It's like, are you kidding me? I can't imagine, just like going to the board meeting, right? It's like 7 Bentleys, 2 Ferraris, a Lamborghini, and just 7 trophy spouses, and a bunch of people saying, "Hey, do this." It's like, that sounded like hell to me. And they said, no, that's not it at all. Okay, and I was a little skeptical. And I had been chapter chair of Chicago and had a really great experience with my local chapter and everything else, but I couldn't imagine YPO on a global scale. What those people must be like,
Yeah.
So I did a couple interviews, and every single conversation I had got more and more interesting. The people became more humble. The people became very focused on servant leadership, and they really just wanted to make the world a better place, and you could see it in the way that they interacted. So I had 2 14-on-1 interviews with people from around the world, and just quizzing me and doing all kinds of different things, and I just found it so stimulating. So my lesson, really, even in the process, is you think and you can paint. It's not even judging a book by a cover. It's really judging a book by what you think the book is about before you've even looked at the cover. I just became more and more interested in trying to do it and wanting to do it. Strangely enough, in the process, I don't know where the switch went, but it really came full circle, because now they had made me an offer and we were negotiating to come aboard. And a couple points, it's like, wow, this is kind of all there is. It's like in my other businesses, I always had some kind of big bonus opportunity, or you figure there's some kind of equity play that's down the road. It's like, this is a membership association. There's no equity. Okay, there's no anything. And I had wanted to come in at a lower compensation than the previous CEO, because I was a member and he wasn't, and I just wanted to at least start out and be in more. Didn't want the optics to be where people thought I came here because it was a job and I didn't have one.
Right.
And because I'm still making less than I made before I took the role. Okay, but none of that even matters, because this is my philanthropy, it's my hobby, and it's my profession, and it all rolls together. And I really feel a sense of mission and working alongside really good people. But as we were going through the discussions, like, wow, I've often said I really don't care that much about money, and I should do what I want to do. And it's like, this is glaring at me, okay? And that's where my forum kind of kicked me in the pants and said, dude, get your head out of your butt. This is exactly what you said you wanted to do, and it's everything you wanted to have. And we don't care if you don't have an exit and can run around and saying you did your exit at 5x and someone else did theirs at 4x. I mean, we don't care about that, and you shouldn't care about it either, because that's not even a headline that really anybody really cares about. So go do what you want to do. And so they really helped me get over the hump. And it's been great ever since.
So think about this role he's going into, and he went into, and he's done an amazing job in Q. But you think about 28,000. Is that 28,000 members now?
28 now. Yeah.
28,000 CEOs across the globe. Okay, overseeing I don't know how many million people, how many million teammates, right? And with what, $3 or $4 trillion of total revenues, Scott?
15.
Wait, 15 trillion? $15 trillion of revenues. Okay.
Wow.
So Q, you want to impact, Q's got some amazing goals here, buddy. And you'd have to hear him, but he wants to.
I'm sorry, I'm getting my numbers wrong. I was mixing employees. It's $9 trillion in revenue. Yeah, it's $9 trillion in revenue.
So Scotty, Q wants to affect a billion people in his lifetime in a positive way, right? And so, he's convinced he's going to do this, and I believe he's going to as well, through mentorship and leadership and all the things we talk about. But I think Scott might be right there.
The person I need to have in my back pocket.
Think about the millions and possibly a billion people are affected by the products his CEO serve, right?
Yeah.
The families, the products, the cash flow, the businesses they do business with, right?
Yeah.
Crazy numbers, and again, Scott's leadership is noted by anybody that's involved in YPO know how he leads and know why we're doing what we do. And this event I was just at with people from all over South American countries. When I talk, I spent a couple of days with these people and didn't know any of them, Scott, but almost every one of them I shouldn't say it, every one of them I met was there to learn and absorb more and learn more, right? And every one of them at the dinner table and lunch and stuff, when we're talking cash, they're talking about the things they're doing outside their business for community and things they believe in and how passionate they are about their different causes, right? So the cool thing about YPO, and I had the same assumption Scott did, that you go on, these are a bunch of kind of arrogant leaders that don't just care about themselves. Well, I'll tell you, and there's lots of CEOs in the world beyond this, but the ones in YPO dominantly are there because they're always learning, no matter how old they are, how rich they are, right? They're there to constantly be learning and being pushed to learn, as well as how are they going to serve the community? What's their legacy going to look like? These are the questions that most of these, almost all of these members that I see have, Scott. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah, and I would echo that, and I'd just suggest, for the listeners, if anybody's still paying attention to us, is really that's a big part of the take home here, right? So I'm blessed because I get to interact with my membership is people who have already had a significant amount of success at an early age. Okay, they became leaders at an earlier age than average, and they're running complex businesses. Okay, we're not. There's a lot of complexity in $1 million revenue business, but that's well below our threshold. So we're dealing with people who are running significant businesses, and so the common attributes among them is really what's fascinating. And Gary's hitting right on it. Okay, it's like you have to be continuously curious. Okay, and arrogant people are not curious. Okay, arrogant people are always looking to validate what they already think they know so that they can prove that they know it. Okay, but curious people are they're self-critical, okay? And they're thinking about what they're already doing, and can they learn something that might actually help them do what they're already doing in a different way. And so instead of, arrogant people criticize others, self-critical people all are reflective on what they can do differently. And I think that's a common thread across the vast majority of our membership. And that's what's so fun, okay? Because when Gary and I can sit down, or any members can sit down, we start talking about an issue or having the luxury to interact with somebody from outside of YPO who's an expert in their field, and we start to quiz them and think about things. We're not trying to show them that they're wrong. We're trying to learn what we can learn about how do we get better at what we do. And so I think that's a singular attribute, that people say they're curious, but they don't read. People say they're curious, but they don't interact with people. People say they're curious and they don't really seek new adventures and new experiences, or they say they're curious and they just work all the time. You can't be curious unless you're carving up different experiences personally and professionally, and that's what YPO does really, really well. And I would suggest, if nobody takes anything else out of our conversation, to know that if we're going to be better tomorrow, I've really got to start exposing myself to different thoughts, different ways, and do it in the most humble way I can.
Yeah. That's really good. So, so when you took over as the CEO of YPO, that actually sounds pretty good. How many members? And I'm gonna get to my point, but how many members were there at the time? Because if it's 28,000 now, how many were there when you first took over as YPO CEO?
It's early in the morning. I'm not as good with my numbers right now, but I think we were somewhere in and around 18,000.
Okay, so from 18,000, then you have 28,000. That's amazing, literally. And at minimum 2,000 new members, and obviously attrition, whatever, but minimum of 2,000 every single year. And I feel that with you saying that you all have, it's a service and you scaled a service, and that's what was interesting to you. I know a lot of people that have service type of businesses and are looking to figure out how to scale it. And my question to you is, what exactly are some things that you've implemented in order to scale a service? I think that's extremely critical for anybody who has a business and trying to grow it.
A service to some of the most picky customers you're ever going to have.
Picky customers. You got a niche product. Like, how did you, 2,000 members a year at a minimum, like on average, is amazing. Like, seriously. So how did you do that?
Thank you, Quentin. I'll get to the question, but I just want to share, it's not our goal to be the world's largest CEO organization or the most domineering organization. We don't have any global domination dreams, okay? Unlike a for-profit business when you're always about share. We just want a community of the most interesting people on the planet, and have them have them be as global as we can, so that we can help everybody learn. So the growth is good because people like growing more than shrinking, okay? But at the same time, we're not chasing growth. We're really seeking the most quality people, okay? So when you think about scaling, as you're suggesting, I think there's just a handful. There's a handful of things that people just align on, okay? And so first of all, whatever you do, you just do it on purpose, okay? People need to know why they're doing something, okay? Because ultimately people control their own behavior, okay? And if they don't understand the why, they'll do it because I told them to for a short amount of time, but ultimately to scale it and replicate it, they're going to do it because they want to do it, okay? So your decisions and the actions you take have to be very intentional, and you have to communicate that intentionality, because the people have to decide to follow you. You don't get to command them. And some entrepreneurs own the companies, and so therefore, since they control the compensation and they hire and fire, everybody laughs at their jokes. But that's not necessarily doesn't mean commitment. Commitment is people have decided that they're going to commit to do a vision. So that intentionality is particularly important. And two, the purpose of that intentionality, that people need a sense of purpose. Yes, I've got a mortgage, but what's the purpose of our company? Are we, what's our bigger vision? I want to ultimately be part of something that's bigger than me. Okay, most people do. It creates stability, it creates community, and it's very human. Societies and tribes have always formed, and you create a tribe out of your company, and you have to have a purpose for your tribe. So in that sense, what's the important cause, okay, that the organization has put together? And then you have to have an environment of all these people that enables them to feel empowered to where they can do their best work. Okay, so that's the processes, that's the empowerment, that's I'm not going to get squashed. It changes a little bit with each generation, but you need to create a positive environment where people feel that they can do their best work there, that there's some upside for them. Daniel Pink talks about mastery and empowerment and all those other things, and all those would fit under that category. But create an environment where people can do their best, not do what you're telling them to do, but where they can be their best. That's a big difference.
That's really good.
Yeah, and then, folks, you got to be relentless, okay? Just got to be relentless and celebrate persistence and resilience and relentlessness, and focus on achievement, not effort, okay? That working hard is great, but actually what really matters is achieving something, okay? So celebrate the achievements, not the effort, and so. That
one right there, Scott, really plays well with millennials, in my opinion, because my kids taught me, and Q is teaching me, and all the millennials around me are teaching me exactly that, right? Look at the results and have some fun metrics to lead by, but don't look at the time and the hours and what time they're checking in, clocking in and clocking out, right?
Exactly. And then the fifth one is really simple. It's like, as the leader, you matter, okay? And your actions need to show that you're 100% interested in helping your team members succeed. It has to be about you helping them, not them helping you. And you need to demonstrate that through servant leadership and caring about them, and recognizing that their goal in life isn't their career. Their goal in life is their families and their self-realization. And you just need to be you need to be about helping them, not the other way around. And so those are the five. It's just really that simple. The intentionality to do things with purpose, on purpose, the organize around some kind of cause or sense of purpose for the organization, an opportunity to do your best work, all right? focus on the achievement and just be relentless about that. And then as your leader, help team members succeed. That's what you need to be known for. And if you can do those 5 things, I think you can scale just about anything. And I live through volunteers. My staff is just under 400, but the people who volunteer to create the YPO organization, there's 10,000 CEOs donating their time. Okay. And so they're working for themselves. They're not working for me, that's for sure. And they're working to give back and do something good, really along those 5 different categories in different ways. And so that's how you scale it, because when you start to take any of those 5 away, people stop being committed. And once they stop being committed, you can't scale anything from a human element.
Mm. So the vision that Scott has to be in touch with and building and he has out there every day is something that the CEOs have to buy into,
right?
And I see this all the time. I'm in the construction industry roundtable network and some others, and as we're involved, we're dedicating our time, and some of these people, like, gosh, some of my friends are dedicating 20, 30 hours a week. Now think about CEOs and dedicating that type of time to a nonprofit. So if we don't have a leader inspiring that and creating a vision to follow, we're probably not going to participate, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a blast. I mean, I might spend a few hours a week on YPO stuff with the stuff I'm involved in, and I have a blast doing it. If I didn't, I wouldn't do it, right? And if I ever, a lot of these members have maybe downsized or taken they've maybe partnered with private equities and have become a board member or chairman of their companies, and they're not involved the day to day like I am. But some of these people are spending 30, 40 hours a week, serving YPO in these these global networks. And so if we don't have somebody that we can look to as Scott, boy, we're probably not going to participate as much, right? We're probably not going to get engaged and waste our time. We'd call it wasting our time then, right? Instead of investing our time, creating a great difference, right? So that's pretty cool, Scott. So again, in our businesses, if we can do that same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Inspire people, create a vision that people want to follow, not are told to follow, right? We're going to be pretty successful. And so I'm sure you had to do that with Duchess companies, and you saw Dick doing that, and you became the person doing that as well, Scott. And it was probably a no-brainer for you, but that's not a no-brainer for everybody. Most people in a position of leadership look at themselves at the top of the pyramid, not the bottom, right? Not an inverted pyramid, but a regular pyramid. They're at the top of, right? And you explained it already. You're serving everybody on your team, and if you're not there to do that, or they don't feel you're there to do that, they're probably not going to be quite as excited, right, to work with you and your team.
Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate that. And I just want to share that there's another big takeaway, that everything you cited there, which is very nice to say it that way, is all how I've changed because of my experience, okay? Not because I had a finance book that told me how to do this, or not because an organization behavior book said to do that. And the other big takeaway in and around all this is the interaction of people and experiences end up creating your learning and your opportunity. Okay, so there's this adage, I don't know who has kids, but if you have your kids and while they're growing up, you want to see who they're hanging around with, right? Who their friends are, because that tells you how they're doing. Okay, and so I would say that from a career standpoint, the exact same thing is true. Okay, that if who you're hanging around with and who you're working with aren't the kind of people you can learn from, aren't the kind of people that are curious, aren't the kind of people that are motivated, you know what? There's not a lot left to rub off on you, okay? And there's not a lot of opportunity that they're going to create for you or you for them necessarily. So I think it's really important. We talk about networking, but even in YPO, 28,000 people. So we talk about that network, but it's 28,000 networks. Okay, so every single CEO knows a bunch of people, and they know a lot of people that have formed their lives who aren't in YPO. And so the nodes of connection in life end up being on who you connect with. So I would just suggest that the industries you work in, the people you work with, end up being really important. But if you can be curious, like we were talking before about that success attribute, and you can put yourself in rooms, in situations, and opportunities with really interesting people, I guarantee you, your career, your opportunity will unfold. And when you hit a bump, it'll be a smaller bump because you have people to help you through it. And that's essentially what YPO is. But at the same time, for all of us, whether you're in YPO or not, be very, very conscious of your life experience based on who you're doing it with, and because that's really the key. So they say it's not about it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. I don't think that's true. I think your learning comes from what you know and the people that you do it with, but that common experience ends up being really powerful, and that's where my career path has gone. I never would have grown up in the east side of Detroit and ended up with any visions of being the CEO of YPO. I mean, there's no straight line that takes me there. With a stop at a horse racetrack, okay? There's no straight line that would take Gary through all the businesses that he's been in. It's because he's become opportune and he's very active even outside of his industry, meeting people and doing things. And I think that's the model for what it takes to have a really good full life. But also, it's the same model that helps you be a really great leader and hopefully run a great business. So they're universal kind of tactics. And
how about the confidence, Scott, that you've gained over your life and just being able to be in the room with leadership and then just being able to walk in the room of a leader that many people would be maybe intimidated to walk in the room of, right? I mean, you don't name drop and talk about all these people that you're so well known with, but man, so many people know you that are at high levels in the world, and yet it's some people are intimidated by walking into the room with a leader of government and a president of a country and all the other things. How do you earn the grit to never have any intimidation, always be able to be open and honest and all that? How'd you do that? Because that's something you have to do every day. It's pretty cool.
Thank you. I think some of it's just innate, about how any one of us engages other people. Okay, but it's also got an element of public speaking. Some people hate public speaking, but the more they do it, the better they are at it. So there is a comfort level that builds up over time. But ultimately, it's a realization that I've also got in YPO. When I said, boy, I didn't think I belonged in YPO and everything else, but everybody's got stuff, okay? And everybody's got struggles in their lives, and they may not be apparent or whatever else. And I guarantee you that any president of a country or any the UN Secretary General and all these big, powerful business icons, they've got stuff. Some things are working well, some aren't. And it's comforting to know that, not that my life is better than theirs or my life is worse than theirs, but they're humans, okay? And you know what? You ask a good question, a human will want to respond to it. And if you engage people as equal, you'd be amazed at how they'll respond as equals. If you engage as the wallflower in the corner, they're going to treat you like the wallflower in the corner. So I think you just need to say, hey, Gary's a person too. I'm going to go up and say hi to Gary. I don't know him. Hey, my name's Scott Mordell. I've always wanted to meet you. I've got a question for you. And you know what? Gary's most likely going to say, cool, I'll answer the question. And then now we have a conversation going on. And It's only because he's a human and I'm a human and I'm willing to treat it as such. Well,
and exactly that type of engagement just gets you so far in life. I mean, I love people, never have a problem meeting anybody, and I end up falling into just great examples of interaction with people that I never would imagine I'd ever meet, right? And so Austin and I were asked to speak at that conference in Miami, and how fun was it for Austin and I to speak about the generational leadership, technology, and millennials, technology minds of millennials merging with old school engineering in our businesses, and it was a blast. And I meet all these people. I'm talking to one guy that was a second runner-up for president in Panama, who was a really cool entrepreneur there. I've got you got some leaders of countries that are in this audience, as well as just really neat business entrepreneurs and stuff. But it was so fun, right? And then after you get to know these people, and they're actually learning from my hillbilly ditch digger experience, right? Because I didn't know this, but the guy who chaired this event, a friend of mine that chaired this event, he did the ditch digger our jingle, and the intro to Ditch Digger as the intro to Austin and I going up and speaking at this event.
Amazing.
So Clarence McCaskler is a friend of mine out of Arizona who comes from Panama, and he's really neat guy. But it's funny because he played that to begin with, and afterwards it's fun because all these leaders of businesses and some of country and all that had lots of questions after and asked about our experience and how we did this or that. So it's kind of fun, right, for to interact with these people on a person-to-person basis, and That's what you get out of just digging in and saying and volunteering for stuff, right? But fun stuff. But YPO, as well as other organizations like YPO, leadership organizations, if they're there, they're probably there to learn. And boy, how fun is it to be part of somebody else's learning as well as your own. So
absolutely.
I look at your life, Scott, and I'm just amazed at the path you've gone on and where you're at today. Where do you see yourself going in the next 10, 15 years? I also think about Vicky. What an amazing wife, an unfair advantage, I call that, right? When you have a great spouse that's there to support you and work so hard with you, right, to create these opportunities for your kids, your family, yourself. Let's finish up with a little of that, if we could.
Well, thank you. First of all, my better half is actually my better 78%. Okay, so we've been together. She was 16 and I was 17 when we met. Okay,
wow.
and we've been together ever since. And so I've talked about supportive people and really,
Wait, I get interrupt there one time because 16, 17, and all that. She's a year younger than you, right?
Well, she's younger than me.
So most people do think that she's his trophy wife, in my opinion. But if they look at the two of them, because she looks like she's more than a year younger than Scott, she looks like she's probably 10 years younger. And Scott doesn't look old, but she looks better, I got to say. So sorry, I had to interrupt that. Just to say
Thank you, and I'm sure she'll appreciate this part of the podcast. So we've been together. We've been a really great partnership, and so a lot of what I've been able to do, it's been because really. She's been kind of the half or the 80% of my life that really matters, and we've ebbed and flowed with all of these different adventures and had our own personal adventures as it goes, and so I've been very fortunate that way, and I don't view my career as my own, and it's really our career, and any successes are ours, and we're very fortunate because we've got a family we love. We love to hang out together. We travel together. We're just blessed, and she's just really a thread. I tend to think before I feel. Okay, she tends to feel before she thinks, and so when you think about being complementary, and most things in life happen because of the way they feel to you. She's really been wonderful. So I'm fortunate for that, and so looking out the years, that's like. For me, it's really simple. Is I always want to have a challenge in my life, because if I don't have a challenge, I feel like I'm regressing or I'm dying. Okay, so I got to create challenges for myself, and I want to work with great people. Okay, I want to work and interact with what I think are great people. Okay, and I just want to keep growing and having new experiences that way. So I'll be at YPO for a while until it stops filling that need, or I stop filling that need for them. But it won't change my life either which way, because we'll just change kind of the frame of which we play. But I want to be very active and just want to continue experiencing all life has, because I don't think there's ever been a better time to be alive, quite frankly. The technological change, the fact that nobody's really restricted by other players right now, the volatility of what technology can do for good and what technology empowered in an individual can do for bad. I mean, this is the entire human condition all playing right out in front of us.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how things happen and if I'm on the wrong end of some things, but I'm just glad I'm alive to experience it and really, really blessed with every day.
Awesome. I was I see you. I'm going to see your future for you. Okay. In Illinois, we have an issue with this state and where we're at financially. And this isn't about politics. This is about survival of our businesses and jobs in Illinois, in my opinion, right? But boy, dude, I think Scott would make a great governor in 2000. What's it going to be? 22, I guess. Is that what it is? Is that what that's no? Am I saying no? Yeah.
JB just took office, right?
Yeah. So okay, so it'd be 2022, right?
Right.
Is the next okay so
yeah.
So there we go. All right, I believe that Scott's a guy that we could promote Q to create the vision to turn the state around. After JB gets done working on it and trying his best, I think Scott might be the perfect position for that. What do you think, Scott?
You're kind. Thank
you. Not a politician, right? But a guy that understands politics, a leader that understands leadership. Boy, I tell you what, I think we were saying it first here, Q. Okay, just so you know, it was said first here. Scott Mordell, Governor.
Oh man,
2022.
Boy, you're very kind. This has been a real treat. I really enjoyed the opportunity to do this with you, and just enjoyed the other episodes so much, and just can continue to follow. And I love the whole spirit of what you're bringing to all this, Gary. So thank you for doing this.
Scott, thank you. I tell you what, you're going to be a joy to be friends with for the rest of my life, and to watch your track. It's going to get more and more amazing, in my opinion, no matter which way you go, because you're always going to challenge yourself to be the best you can be, and you're going to affect other people's lives so positively by thinking that way.
Completely agree.
So Q usually has his takeaways here. So
yeah, man.
Let's hear it, brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely got some. Oh, listen, I was definitely writing some of this stuff down that you have, Scott. Quentin's true takeaways. I have 5 quick ones for you guys. First, and this is kudos to Dick himself. Do what is right, not what is easy. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, at least that I know, try to do it the other way around. But what you said is extremely key, which keeps the integrity live. Another one, it's all about the people, especially when it comes to business. Purpose, people, process brings capital. Oh my gosh. What? I mean, and then when we talked about the scaling aspect, whatever you do it on purpose. And you spoke about the 5 key areas: intentionality, purpose behind the intentionality, empowering your environment, focus on the achievement. And I appreciate you saying that, not the effort, but more importantly, which I think is even the embodiment of true mentors, but servant leadership. Learning comes from what you know and who you do it with, right? That's huge. Association is key in everything. And this really is the start of me and Gary's relationship, but you nailed it on the head. When you ask a good question, a human will respond to it. And when I first met Gary, I asked him, hey, can I get a cup of coffee with you? And that started the whole idea of what authentic mentorship looks like, at least to me and Gary and this podcast and everything else that we have. So, we've definitely interviewed a lot of people, Scott. And one thing I can say is you have an abundance of human capital. You are true and through, and I'm looking forward to building more rapport with you, my friend, and I just appreciate you being on, seriously.
I want to add one more thing. Well, one thing is I think about these mentors like Dick, and I think it's Ray and who was the other one? Who was the guy at the third? There's a third one in there. Martin, was it? Anyway, who was the other guy that was in your life? Martin, I think it was, or
there was Ray and Dick, and we did talk about his son Craig in different ways as being mentors. But I've been blessed. I've had somebody who's been, or some people who have been really over my shoulder and arm in arm with me, literally in everything I've done. I've been really fortunate.
So you think of those names and others, right, that have been mentors for Scott in his life, and how cool it is for them to know that this guy has carried on and done so much with a lot of them in him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Craig and Dick and Ray and all these guys. So how fun is that? And then lastly, I want to ask, when you're around the globe, you're seeing CEOs and businesses from everywhere in the world, Scott. What's the advantage to the American free enterprise system? Do you see one, and tell me about that if you do?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's not. I believe in capitalism, and I believe in the free enterprise system, and I believe in the opportunity. But we're seeing a lot of opportunity in communist countries. We're seeing a lot of opportunity in what we would think of as socialist countries as well. I think the magic of America is really this sense of unbounded culture. I mean, we're not limited, okay? And in fact, there's collectivist societies, and then there's more individual societies. And I would argue that the United States and Western Europe tend to be a little bit more individualistic relative to a lot of different attitudes. And there's always, where does collectivism and individualism overlap? But the magic of America is, one, this is my home. I know, this is who I am innately, is we're just unbounded. There's really this culture that's built up, and I think it's in our DNA. Of somebody who's grown up and lived here, that it's anything's possible. You look at some of these other societies, and they do have caste systems, and it really is hard to get from one level to another level. But here in America, you can look at somebody who started as an immigrant, or started with nothing, or started with just a little something in an education, but a lot of guts and a lot of fortitude, and they turn out to not just have wealth. I think it's not about the wealth. I think it's far more about what they do with what we would consider their success, and how they give back, and how they serve society in the whole. And you just look at some extraordinary Americans who didn't inherit what they have, but you look at what they're doing, and it's so inspiring, and I think it's rooted in our capitalist system, of course, and our free enterprise, of course, but it's our DNA that's our magic, and our culture and our attitude, and as long as we can keep that alive, I think we'll still be, 4% of the global population, generating more than 20% of global GDP, just because we can, and we do, and we don't see any reason why not. And I think that's been powerful.
So the impact is the biggest thing that you see. The impact that we're able to make in America as entrepreneurs, leaders in business, and all that is the coolest thing.
Yeah, and go further, right? Because philanthropy in America is bigger than anywhere else. Okay, you look at the way that people participate outside their businesses to do other things in very significant ways. And while there's rich families in a lot of different countries and the rest, the sheer magnitude of middle class and other people doing philanthropy as well, it just says it's really part of our culture, and it's particularly special. Whether it be the Cancer Society, whether it be the Polar Plunge, there's so many ways that people participate in actually making society better, and it's far collectivist across the population, which I think is just fascinating, and I really honor that.
There you go. Heard from my buddy who sees leadership and business and all over the globe, right? You can't get that just anywhere, right? You can't have a guy like this just anywhere, right? Telling us these stories and giving us sharing his experience. So Scott, you're a invaluable person in my life and so many lives, and I really appreciate you, brother. And thanks so much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you, guys. This has been a real treat. I appreciate you, and we'll see you soon, Gary.
God bless you, brother.
And we'll see you next time on Ditch Diggers CEO.
See ya!